Hi, everybody. I've got a slightly different setup and I'm about a few minutes late this evening, but I'm here. Woohoo! Made it happen. Okay, so I am actually obviously not in my normal Cosi Talk studio. I am on a small spring break here with my family, but I made it tonight and I'm excited to be here. So I'm going to wait for some of y'all to jump on board and let me know if you can hear me. I didn't bring my microphone with me. I forgot it at home. So hopefully audio will still be coming through pretty decently. Hey, what's going on, Stephen? Yes, I drank from the fountain of youth, which I know it's not terribly noticeable right now because I'm in my jammies and no makeup and everything. But I did drink from the fountain of youth today. Hey guys, I see a number of you popping on board. If you can just give me a shout out, let me know if everything is okay. I know the lighting's a little off this evening. I'm obviously not in my home studio. Thank you, Glenda, for letting me know. Hey, Harsh. Hey, the famous Mark S is on board too. Hey, Ashley. Good. You guys can hear me. Awesome. Hey, Andrea. I can't thank you enough. I love having another colleague on board every Wednesday. So I really appreciate you being here every Wednesday night. Thank you so much, Andrea. We got Tom McIntyre on board. We've got Jody, Bonnie. Hey, Line. Salud, Line. So my husband, so obviously I am not at home. I'm in the beautiful city of St. Augustine, which guys, you know, if you're a Floridian, for most kids, the rite of passage is that their parents take them to Washington, D.C. at some point, right? You got to go see your nation's capital, see all the sites. If you're a Floridian, your rite of passage is your parents have to take you to St. Augustine at some point. So my husband and I are so fortunate that we were able to bring the kids on their spring break to see St. Augustine. It's the first city of the United States. There's a lot of firsts here. The first wooden schoolhouse, the first jail. That was a lot of fun. What else did we see? The Fountain of Youth. We're going to go see the Fort San Marcos tomorrow. So that's going to be a lot of fun. Hang on, guys. I've got someone knocking at the door. And I'm back. Okay, so we got people going in and out of the hotel rooms. Yes, am I drinking a special fountain of adult beverages? Thanks. Hold on, Kenny. So it's interesting. Tonight we were out and about grabbing dinner, and my husband's like, you didn't bring your Cosi Talks mug, and you need to get some coffee. So he was so sweet to get me a decaf café con leche. So cheers, everybody. We can start this show properly. All right, we got K's from, I'm not going to even try to pronounce that. K's from Canada. You're going to have to help me pronounce that at some point. New legs are being made right now, and you start physiotherapy on Monday. That's wonderful. And let's see. Hey, Gilbert from St. Augustine. Awesome. All right. We've got Doug Campbell feeling great in Canada with the Coke Zero. New bilateral pin lock legs coming on Monday. Wonderful. We got Grant from Salt Lake City. Always wanted to go to St. Augustine, guys. It really is just a beautiful city. It's a beautiful, historic little town in the colonial quarter. You can kind of get lost and you think you're in Europe, in a small European city. A lot of beautiful history, beautiful Spanish history. So for me, that's always a nice soft spot there. Getting to see a little bit of my heritage there. Hey, Frank, compadre, glad you could make it, man. All right, guys, we're going to jump in. So you'll bear with me tonight. I have my questions stored here on my computer, so I could bring it with me. Who's behind me? I think that's one of my little munchkins. We've got you'll see little people, or not so little people.
No, I thought she was on the other side.
There. Sorry. That's my not so mini me anymore. That's Fausti. She's my number one. She's my oldest. So okay.
Was that?
All right, you can go ahead, sweetheart.
Thank you.
All right, so you might see some people zipping back and forth tonight, guys. All right, guys, let's go ahead and start with the first question for this evening. So this first question came from Mary Skelton. And the reason why I would love to just read this one out is because I've never had a question regarding this particular hobby. She said that I am a left above the knee amputee, and my two loves are Sururu karate and horseback riding. So I got my black belt 1 month after my amputation in a wheelchair. That's amazing, guys. I did like martial arts for all of 5 minutes in college, and black belt is just something really incredible. Okay, so now she was asking questions about how to handle riding a horse with a socket, because obviously as she comes onto the horse, it just feels with the hard socket that she will lose suction. So this is interesting. I was able to chit chat with her a little bit on different kind of feet that might help. There was a particular foot from Oser that I was recommended for her for this particular purpose, especially for posting. But in general, I just kind of wanted to bring up horseback riding because it's a really fantastic strengthening exercise. I know, right? So my first year and a half when I was practicing as a physical therapist, I actually worked in the pediatric wards. So I worked with kids, all variety of children with developmental disorders, with other illnesses and pathologies. And obviously cerebral palsy and spina bifida were high on that list of many patients that I would see. And back then, equinotherapy, horse therapy, was starting to become a very valuable tool for children, especially with cerebral palsy. And what was discovered through studies was that the strengthening that these kids developed from riding horses helped them overcome some of that spasm, some of that really hypertonicity that these cerebral palsy children develop. So for me, when I saw that Mary was a horseback rider, I thought this was really interesting because it's a really wonderful way to do a lot of core strengthening, to do a lot of glute strengthening, okay? A lot of thigh muscles. Think about thigh muscle you have to do to kind of stay on the horse. Obviously, with something like a suction socket, you got to use your imagination and try out a couple of different things. The first thing that came to my mind was honestly a hip belt. We see these, we use these belts a lot with our runners when they're trying to control the amount of rotation going on in their sockets and also trying to give them that extra suspension. So for horseback riding, that is something I recommended. So that's just something. Are there anybody else out there who rides horses? I'd be curious to hear how you dealt with riding a horse after amputation. All right, I've missed several comments and I don't want to miss any more. Let me read through some of these comments. Hey, Janie, Janie, you're here. Wonderful. Hey, Kevin. All right, we've got Urbano from Houston, Texas. Let's see. Yes, Gilbert, this weather could not be more beautiful. It is the perfect weather. This is the reason why we live in Florida, is for this brief 1 or 2 months of weather. Hey, Megan from St. Augustine. Oh, wonderful. Yes, Mark, she really is. Thank you for that. Thank you, Sandra. I love St. Augustine. It's absolutely gorgeous here. I was looking at Flagler College. It's just this beautiful college campus in the middle of, and right next to the Colonial Quarter. And I'm like, God, how nice would it have been to go to college in a place like this, huh? Hey, Chuck, I'm glad you could join us this evening. Stephen says she needs to Google Footless Joe. She rides occasionally and has great content. Awesome. Let's see what else we got in here. So Gilbert says, has horseplay therapy, really cool experience watching them work. And I've been wanting to get back to it as well. Kay says also in AK. So, it's interesting. It's one of those things where, like I said, when I worked in pediatrics, we just saw how wonderful a therapy this was for children, obviously emotionally, psychologically, but physically. It was really building strength in a really great way. So if you can somehow troubleshoot those issues with the socket and the suspension of the socket, that's a fabulous tool right there. Ashley says equine therapy is used also a lot for children on the autism spectrum. It helps them learn patience and how to calm themselves and focus. Exactly. Hey, Mervyn from Northern Ireland. Oh my goodness. Cheers. Let's see. Tiffany Glass, Flagler. I'm going to have to do that, Megan. Megan, can you send me a message so I don't forget that? Because I'm always looking for new things to see here. Okay, so Olga says Footless Joe is a BK, not an AK, but that's still interesting. Just the name alone is interesting for me to want to look that up later on. All right, guys, let's move on to the next question. Is from Arnold. Let me look up his question real quick. I have him stored here on my email, so I'm looking him up. Arnold says, this is one of those I'm asking for a friend questions, but in this case, it's true. I have a very healthy 70-year-old friend who's been a traumatic above-the-knee amputee for decades using an Autobach 3R80 hydraulic knee for years, who's developed very bad, painful osteoarthritis in his intact knee. He's been getting injections in the knee, but they're no longer working that well. His prosthetist suggested that a microprocessor knee would help, but his insurance company has denied it. And I wanted to help him out and wondering if there was any scientific evidence that an MPK versus a hydraulic knee reduces osteoarthritic symptoms and improves function in the intact knee. So this was an interesting question, Arnold, and I actually posted this question to the Facebook support group that I belong to for physical therapists who work with amputees. And I did find a study. That indicated that in using a microprocessor knee, you are, if all other things are considered equal, you are more efficient in your gait pattern, right? So if you're more efficient in your gait pattern, that means that you are accepting more of the weight onto that microprocessor knee compared to your sound knee. And therefore, you're taking the stress off of the sound leg. Okay. But here's my caveat, guys. Okay. We have all the bells and whistles with microprocessor knees, and they are a phenomenal tool for the amputee community to use. It was such a huge game changer when microprocessor knees became available to the everyday amputee, meaning not just the one or two amputees who were testing them out. But if you don't know how to use it, it's not going to give you those benefits. Okay. So it's more about how you use the knee, whether it's mechanical or microprocessor, in what I have seen. I'm not basing this on a research study. I'm just basing this on what I have seen in my 18 years of practice. It's more about how the person uses the knee. Okay. Now, all things considered equal, okay, a person who walks well with a mechanical knee and does a good, efficient gait is certainly probably going to walk better with that microprocessor knee, provided that they've been given that training and they continue to use good gait mechanics. Okay. And as far as insurance companies are concerned, that's like the holy grail there, is figuring out what's going to make an insurance company finally say yes to the equipment that you need. So with regards to, should you provide the insurance company with studies that perhaps could support your claim? Yes, as much as you can. Inundate them with as much information as you can. I know in the few times I get called in for a case, if it's a case where I am seeing the patient before they've received their prosthesis, then I certainly love working with the prosthetist to provide as much documentation as possible from my end to help support whatever it is that we as a team have decided would work best for this patient. So it can be in the form of a study. Actually, one of my functional test evaluations, where it's a series of functional tests that I give to a patient to help determine their K levels, I cite all of my references of all the studies where I pull this information from. Like it looks like a thesis paper when I turn it in, but I try to provide as much support as possible. Okay. And yes, as the patient, as the person making that claim, you can provide this information. If you find a study, you can give it to your prosthetist or your physical therapist, and they can look at it and see, okay, is this a credible, valid, reliable study? Is it coming from a credible source? Can we submit this in with the insurance? Go for it. All right, here we go. We've got a lot of comments. Okay. Hey, Susan Walker, glad you could join us this evening. Andrea says, used to volunteer with the hippotherapy, so much fun. Yes. I mean, I did more, like, my experience with the alternative therapies with kids was the aqua therapy back when my lifeguarding days, long time ago. But I would see the equine therapy and I would just think it was just so neat. So neat. Okay. Excellent. Brett just got his insurance to approve his microprocessor knee today. Hallelujah to that. That's kind of awesome. Oh, Brian, thank you. And it's interesting, Brian. Brian says your role is important to providing backup. And again, guys, it's I've been doing this for over 18 years. And, every insurance claim that I try to help a person make, it's completely different from any other one that I've done. So it's just going to the prosthetist, and thank goodness the prosthetists that I work with that ask for my input, they are very good at what they do. They're very good at making the legs that they make, and they're also very good at submitting things properly to the insurance company to help the patient achieve what it is that they need to function in their lives. So I'm very fortunate in that regard that I have a great leadership from the prosthetist in that regard. But yes, it's something that, if you can get the therapist on board saying the same thing as the prosthetist, as your doctor, and you have everybody on the team submitting supporting paperwork, your chances do improve for something like that. All right. Please hold. Let me find this other question that was here. Sorry. Okay, Okay, this question definitely made me smile. This question came in from Steve. He says, here's a quick question that may interest some. Why is your business named Palanca? I know the answer. I took the time to look it up, but I'm willing to bet not many will look up into what it means. And he talks about, yes. So guys, many of you know me obviously as Cosi from Cosi Talks the show, but my outpatient clinic that I have in Tampa, it's a private outpatient clinic, small clinic, nothing impressive, and it's called Palanca. So it's the Spanish word for plank. And it's kind of a play on words. Obviously, the physical planks that sometimes I will torture my patients with doing, but also it's in Spanish, it also means to lift someone up. So I had opened up my practice shortly after I finished my treatment for breast cancer. And in the, craziness of recovering and trying to establish my new life after cancer, opening up my clinic, thrown in on top of that, I wanted a name that meant something that was different. Number one, that was different because, I like quirky names, as is obvious by my own name. But I wanted a name that would stand out and that would mean something. So Palanca just kind of fit in there nicely as a way to lift my patients up in the same way that they lift me up with treatment. So here we go. Ashley says, I see my PM&R next week for my 6-month checkup and get my script for new supplies. Yes. I've had my current foot for 3 years now. Is that too early to look into asking for a new foot? No. I mean, Ashley, it's one of those, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. If the foot that you're using right now is a foot that you're happy with and you are buzzing along nicely with it, keep it going, right? Same thing with sockets. There are some people, it's not a very high percentage, but there's a small percentage of people who have great success with their sockets, and they can keep that same socket for a really long time. We're talking years, guys, years. My buddy Reggie Showers, I think he's got some sockets that he's had for 15 years because they've continued to fit him and suit him well. So when it's time to look for a new foot, you really need to ask yourself, okay, what is it that you're looking for in that new foot? Is there anything in your life that you're not able to do because of limitations from your foot or your knee? And then Ashley, in your case, I know you're extremely active and I know you're into your exercise and you have a physical therapist that I know is keeping you in shape. But asking yourself, okay, is my inability to do this particular hobby or event because of the foot or because there's some strengthening that needs to happen? So again, great conversation to have with your prosthetist, really great conversation to have with your physical therapist to see if there's a need for a change at all. All right, let's see. So this was an interesting question. This one came in from, hey, Rita, glad you could make it. Came in from Lee. Lee said, is allodynia, related or possibly caused by amputation? So just a quick note, allodynia is basically pain from a stimulus that isn't normally painful. So for example, just the act of someone brushing up on your arm and that sends your pain nerves kind of flaring up a lot, not something that would normally cause you pain, or laying down on a pillow, all of a sudden that stimulus causes pain. So it can be seen, yes, definitely it can be seen after a traumatic injury such as amputation. Sometimes it's seen in diabetics because of the nerve damage that can occur from the diabetes. Sometimes you can see it after neuralgias that can occur, so just infections and irritation and inflammation of the nerves. William says he had the same socket for a year. Hey, Matthew. So Matthew is our big winner from last week, guys. Last week, I had the Amputee Coalition on board, and it was the Director of Government Relations, Mike Zwolinski. If you didn't have the chance to check out that show, guys, I would encourage you to do so. It's on my YouTube channel as well as my Facebook page. So Mike was really wonderful just about talking about, okay, what is the Amputee Coalition? It's been around now for quite some time, and it's definitely been growing and making a presence in our nation, which is wonderful. And what are the programs that it provides? And again, I knew about some of the programs, but some of the things that he was naming as the resources is incredible. Among them, the Certified Peer Visitor, obviously the huge network of support groups nationwide that the Amputee Coalition can connect you with. And then Matthew was our lucky winner for the free ticket, the Willy Wonka golden ticket to the national conference being held in September this year in Schaumburg, Illinois, close by Chicago. So congratulations to you, Matthew. Jamal Brothers, you haven't missed too much, so come on board. Come and listen in. Okay, so here's one for you. Pam says, my physical therapist says that when I walk, I whip my foot around with each step. What is the best way to stop this habit? I am a right above the knee for 3 years. Okay, so it could be a couple of different things. When a person's whipping, it's basically, it's really kind of, I need Bob. Bob got left behind. He's not going to be real happy with me when I get back home. So when a person's walking, and this can happen both in above the knee amputees as well as below the knee amputees, okay? Instead of taking a normal step that goes underneath the body, okay, the person might whip their leg around, okay? So for an above the knee, it could be a couple of things. It could be, number one, the height discrepancy, okay? As you are learning to use your prosthesis and you're adjusting the volume of socks, right, that you use, because your limb is going to change shape and it's going to shrink. Sometimes you might sink into your socket, and then you might put on too many socks and you might be elevated out of your socket. So it'll create the illusion that your prosthetic leg is too long. And the way to compensate, people will compensate for that, is that they'll whip the leg around because they don't want to drag their foot across the floor. Okay, so that's one possibility. Usually the first thing I do when I start to see some sort of gait deviation is check the height. So your physical therapist, Pam, will know how to do that. Usually we check it starting at the hip bone, the big juicy hip bone that we got here at our waistline. Okay. The next thing that I see a lot in my above the knee amputees when they come in to see me is that they don't know how to bend that knee. Okay. How to do that smooth motion of bending the knee, bringing it underneath the body and bringing it back out again. Okay, so because that requires coordination, it requires stability, okay, and it requires to know how to activate the timing in your microprocessor knee. So remember how I said microprocessor knees are great, but you got to know how to use them. This is a big part of it, is knowing how to take that knee in, we call it swing phase, where your leg is swinging underneath you, bending it and out again, okay? So those are the two big culprits that I see when it comes to people who whip their leg around like that, okay? For my below the knee amputees, it's also there. And also there can be some issues with the alignment. But first I check with checking the hips to see if the sound leg and the prosthetic leg are the same length, okay? And then next seeing, okay, how is this person bending their knee? And guys, let me see if I can find that video. I'm gonna look for that video. So like I said, it's probably the most common deviation that I'll see is that someone is not comfortable using their microprocessor knee. Sorry, I'm trying to look at this video for you guys. Thank you for bearing with me. I'm going to my YouTube channel, which, by the way, guys, please go subscribe. It's actually got some pretty decent stuff in there that I've got on the YouTube channel. I am not finding that video right now. It's the Mission Gate video, guys. If one of you guys, because some of you guys will sometimes post it for me, Mission Gate YouTube, just type in Mission Gate Cosi in the YouTube channel. And there's a video I do where I am teaching the 1, 2, 3 step cockroach. And that's a lot of times what I'll have my patients go back to doing, okay? So it'll show them how to bring that knee out, okay? And how to bend that knee properly. Okay. All right. Couldn't find the video, but hopefully you guys will be able to find it. All right. Let me check this other question. All right. Let's find these other questions. Okay. I'm close to the end of my new leg project, so now I need to decide on what to do with my current prosthetic. My initial thought was to just save it as a spare. A realistic look at this today is I should not wear this leg as it exists again. It's just become too painful, and I'm told some alignment issues are causing stress on my back. Now, this is a question I do get quite often, where people are like, okay, so I've got this extra leg. What do I do with it? So in this particular person's case, he cannot use that leg anymore because it was causing him problems. The alignment was off. It was a painful socket. So it's not available for him to use. So in that case, what I would say is look at the parts. If these are parts that you can use again, then I would say look into the cost of making just a simple socket, reattaching these parts, and perhaps using this leg as a beach leg, a pool leg, a shower leg, as your just extra leg that's there. Another thing is looking into organizations like the Range of Motion Project. I know that they were very recently, and I don't know if it's still ongoing, doing a parts drive where you could donate your extra prosthetic parts, and then they would take it to their missions and clinics in, I believe it's South America, I believe is where they are, and help people make their legs from that. So that to me is just a wonderful, that's to me like the ultimate way to recycle in the limb loss community, because some of these parts are just so expensive and they might very well be in good shape. These feet and these knees can be in pretty decent shape. But if it's not something that you think you're going to use, it's certainly worth a Google search to see, okay, who else can make use of these things, right? Susan says, every time I get a new neoprene sleeve, for 2 to 3 weeks, I get tiny little blisters on my skin all the way around the top edge of the sleeve, and the skin itches so badly and super red. After most 3 weeks, it stopped itching and the skin goes back to normal. Susan, So Susan, usually when I see something like that, I just think, okay, you're either having a combination of a little bit of an allergic reaction, just a reactive, kind of almost like a little dermatitis going on, but just something, and just obviously there's something in that neoprene that's causing you to have a little bit of an allergic reaction. And then if it's on the edges, okay, obviously that's where you're going to have a little bit more friction, a little bit more movement between the sleeve and your skin. So it's going to cause that little red rash and little blisters. So Susan, 2 things. Maybe asking your prosthetist to see if there's a different kind of material that may not be as irritating to your skin. But then also a particular product that I love to recommend to my patients is the liquid to powder lotion from Vital Fit. Many of you have heard me talk a lot about Vital Fit on the show. It's the skincare line that was made exclusively for amputees and diabetics. And for me and my patients in my clinic, it's been a game changer. So they have an entire line of items, skincare items, one of which is a liquid to powder lotion. And it's exactly that, Susan. It goes on as a liquid, dries as a powder, and it's meant to help reduce the friction in the socket for little hot spots like what you're talking about right there. So that might be something you might want to look into. So I went ahead and posted the code. I have a nice little discount code that they gave me. If you go to my website, look up the Vital Fit products, and you can put that code in and get the travel size and try it out and see if it works for you. Hey, Linda. Yes, Stephen, when I see the parts drive, I love it, because here, unfortunately, because of like red tape and law and this and that and the other, a prosthetist technically cannot take a foot or a knee from another patient and use it on another patient. Even if the part is working perfectly fine, they can't reuse the product. It's just not allowed. But outside of the United States, there's a little more flexibility there. And obviously these folks are in great need. So obviously they make sure, and I know the prosthetists and the clinicians who take these parts over to these other countries make sure that these parts are in working order and that they're going to do good for the person receiving them. So for me, it's a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer. If these parts are sitting in your closet and you're not going to use them, like I said, for a beach leg or a pool leg or a shower leg, then something to think about. All right. Pat says, as a right above the knee, I feel very fortunate to have a microprocessor knee. Prosthetists and physiatrists did a very nice job giving rationale to the insurance company as to why I needed and deserved it. Happy National Beer Day. I didn't realize it was Happy National Beer Day. Well, all I got is a decaf café con leche to cheer with. So sorry about that. Not the AMP store, Susan. You can go either to the VitalFit website itself, or if you go to my website at www.cositalks.com, you're going to see a little tab that has VitalFit. You can find their products there and purchase them through there as well. Yes, Kevin, thank you. ROMP, Range of Motion Project. Let's see. See, Matthew said it right there. There we go. Excellent, Susan. Try it out. And again, Susan, it's not just the liquid to powder lotion. See if there's some other material that can be ordered. If it's not causing you any problems anymore, then maybe your skin got used to it, hopefully. But if you're still seeing those blisters and the liquid to powder doesn't clear it up completely, it could be that you're having just a sensitivity reaction to that particular material, and maybe want to look into something else. All right. Linda, you keep missing me. I am in St. Augustine. I'm in the beautiful, beautiful city of St. Augustine, the first city of the United States. And it's a lot of beautiful, I was telling some folks, it's a beautiful bucket list city. It's a nice three-day vacation where there's so much to see. Oh my gosh, like we have not stopped all day long. My kids were just like, are we done yet? Are we done yet? I mean, we haven't stopped. It has been just nonstop. There's so much history here, and it's wonderful to see all the attractions here. Okay, let's get to this other question. Ooh, this was a good one. This one was sent to me. Oh, you've been here, Linda. Linda, what was your favorite attraction here when you were here? And I want to hear I know I got a couple of locals here on board tonight. What are your favorite, obviously there are tourist attractions for people like me, but what are your favorite attractions here in St. Augustine? So while we're waiting for those answers, I'm going to answer Beth's question. Beth asked me, are tests such as the AMP Pro and AMP No Pro for K levels good indicators of mobility and balance, considering how much prosthetic technology has changed in the past 25 years? So this is a really great question that was posed. And again, this is something that it's good for you all to know this information, because when it does come time for you to update your prosthetic componentry, this is information that you need to be aware of so you can have this conversation with your prosthetist and your physical therapist. So AMP Pro, AMP No Pro. How many of you have heard of that? Show of hands. Linda says the Cuban restaurant. Gilbert, do I like cats or dogs? I have a cat and a dog. I like them both. That's an interesting question. So show of hands, how many of you have heard about the AMP Pro? And I'm going to write it down. And the AMP No Pro. Okay, Stephen says, I have. Okay, so the AMP Pro is short for amputee with prosthesis. AMP No Pro means amputee no prosthesis. And it was a functional test that was created by Bob Gailey. Bob Gailey is kind of like the big hoo-ha of physical therapy in amputee. He has written, I don't know how many books, done I don't know how much research. Really phenomenal individual when it comes to physical therapy world and the world of limb loss. So he's been a wonderful trailblazer for us. So he created the AMP Pro, and it's a 25 or 35. I still have to have it in front of me. 25 to 35 items that are tested on the amputee. And as you test the individual on these different skills and different things that they have to do, you give them a grade of 0, 1, or 2, depending on if they were able to perform the skill and how they were able to perform the skill. There's a version that is done with the prosthesis, and then there's a version that is done without the prosthesis in the event that if this person still hasn't received their first prosthesis. So after you do all the different skills and you test the individual, you tally up the score, and then you determine if the person is a K level 1, 2, 3, or 4. Okay. So why was this such a huge thing? Okay. Because when Medicare put these rules on board about the K levels, we really didn't have a whole lot to base it on. We didn't have an objective way of determining if a person was a K1, a K2, a K3, or K4. All we knew is that they had to have variable cadence, or that they were only at home. It was very fuzzy. So with the AMP Pro and the AMP No Pro, okay, it's much more detailed, and it's much more detailed with regards to the functional mobility of the individual, okay? But like all tests, no one test is perfect, okay? So it is an amazing tool to use. I use it all the time with my patients when I'm helping to determine their K levels, okay? But what happens is sometimes, for example, my patient will miss the K3 level by 1 or 2 points, right? And as a clinician looking at this patient, I'm looking at this patient going, I know this patient is a K3 level. Like they've got it written all over them. And I know that if they receive that MP, if they receive the microprocessor knee, they will become a K3 level. But technically, they missed it by 1 or 2 points, okay? So when I opened up my practice, what I did is I went and I looked up all the other functional tests that physical therapists have in their arsenal to use, okay? And I found about 4 or 5 other functional tests that have amputee scores, meaning it's not just scored for the person with 2 anatomical legs, it's scored for a person who is missing 1 leg. It's not perfect, but it's a start. So for example, when I have someone who maybe missed that K3 score by 1 or 2 points, and I know that they're capable of it, then I'll pull from all these other functional tests. And I'll pull a functional test for balance, functional test for varied cadence, for gait speed, functional test for endurance, right? And if all those other scores indicate K3, then I submit all of that together to the insurance company so that they can get an even more well-rounded picture of the individual, okay? So I think the AMP Pro and the AMP No Pro is a wonderful tool to use for physical therapists. And notice how I said physical therapists, and I gotta be a little mean here on this one. I think the best person to administer the AMP Pro test is the physical therapist. Here's why. When we go to school, a huge part of our training is how to administer these functional tests and how to know which test to use for which individual. And what I see happen a lot is sometimes the doctor will try to administer this test or the prosthetist will try to administer this test, and it's not done properly, okay? So unless the prosthetist has received specific training on how to administer the AMP Pro test, I always recommend that if you are looking to have this functional test done, to submit it to your insurance company, that you have it done by a trained physical therapist. Those are my thoughts. All right, let's see. There you go, Janie. There you go. Kay says, I use the daily cleanser, daily liquid powder, and the night moisturizer, and I've become a huge fan. Guys, I'm not an amputee myself, and I use their products because it's really nice for the skin. It's really, really, really good. Susan says, I used it on my residual limb and it's been doing really well. Very good. All right. Okay, here's one. And this is kind of on piggybacking on the AMP No Pro test. So this person asked, does a new amputee always start out as a K1, or can they get the numbers they need for a higher level using the AMP No Pro for their first prosthesis? So that's a very good question. No, amputees do not always start off as a K1. No, they start off at the level that they're tested at, okay? And a huge indicator, and this is not the be all end all, but a huge indicator is how the person was doing prior to their amputation, okay? So if I get a 32-year-old male who was a runner and got into a motorcycle accident and lost his leg that way, and then comes to me to have an AMP Pro test, AMP No Pro test, AMP No Pro done to determine his K level, I'm going to be expecting that he's going to score at K3 or K4. That's the whole point of the AMP Pro, AMP No Pro testing, is to see where this person functionally will fall, regardless of the fact that they are an amputee, okay? Not regardless, but keep with that in mind, okay? Now, someone, for example, who was an older individual who had a long course with diabetes, vascular issues, that their mobility was compromised prior to their amputation and they weren't moving around very well before their amputation, I'm not expecting them to score very high on the AMP Pro test. Okay, so they're probably going to score right around where they would have scored even prior to amputation, right? Their mobility level is probably going to be around the same. Okay, now, can you improve? Yes, you can. You can. And to my clinicians out there, and I know that many clinicians have done this, sometimes those functional tests that we use on our patients can also be a great indicator on the skills that we need to work on with our patients. And they can alert us to some of the deficits in our patients. So many of my colleagues will use the AMP Pro as part of their physical therapy evaluation because it does go through so many of the functional skills there. So it can alert us as physical therapists to, oh, they didn't score too good on this one. We need to address this in the plan of care. Okay. And then as the person improves, they can always retake that test to see if there's an improvement in the scores. Yeah. Brett says, cool kids use Vital Fit. That's right. That's right, Brett. So Susan says, I started out with the K3. Yeah. All right. I think we got like my half cheat sheets here, half cheat sheets in other places. I think I got to all the questions, guys. I wasn't sure if my notes were going to get lost in the travel process, but it looks like I got all the questions and everything done. So I think we're good. So guys, before I wrap up for this evening, I am going to put my plug in to see if you guys could please, I'm going to put the link up for you now to make it nice and easy. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. I am trying to build that channel and put a lot more content on there. And it certainly helps to have more followers because it helps get that information out there better. So if you guys have not already subscribed to my YouTube channel, please go ahead and consider doing so after I wrap up the show for this evening. My pleasure, guys. And guys, thank you so much for joining me this evening. I will see you guys next week. Next week, I have a special guest, Unitable, coming on board. It is the Adaptive Clothing Company. Very stylish items that they have on there. So I'm excited to have the owner and CEO, Brittany Burke, on board to come and tell her story and her connection to the limb loss community. So guys, I will see you next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. God bless.